Good afternoon. This is going to be a discussion of the relevant market shares for industrial pumps. Understanding market share is extremely important for a number of different reasons. If you're selling a company, in general, another pump company with synergisms will pay more for a pump supplier than will a private equity investor. This continuing analysis of market shares is a good way to select potential acquirers. If you're buying a company, the analysis of market shares is very important to a pump company acquires. This analysis should be really just a starting point. Market shares by specific product, process, industry, and location are each significant. While market share for all pumps in Asia is part of our basic valve pump report, it's possible to expand this to market share just for boiler feed water pumps for coal-fired boiler plants in India. For organic growth, it's obvious that sales are not made in a vacuum. Expanding sales means taking share away from some of the competitors. So competitor market share knowledge is important for many throughout the organization, including the local salesperson. As competitors merge and gain share, it is important to track these changes. Higher profits can be achieved by the larger suppliers. The number 1 and 2 suppliers in a given market have the potential for higher profits due to the efficient use of resources. Analyzing the profitability of competitors provides insights on how to raise profits. The starting point is market shares. A new concept entitled market share hierarchy analysis provides a unique route to obtaining accurate and relevant share information. The Mcilvaine market share analysis for each pump supplier is valuable for those companies considering acquisitions and divestiture, etc. And it's all included in Pumps World Markets, where we have the market shares for 400 pump companies. It's continuously updated. You get the updating for the next 12 months with a subscription. We are expanding the number of companies being analyzed, and there's a unique accuracy due to the market share hierarchy analysis. As you see on the right, this would be world market shares for some of the pump companies. Further analysis by process within applications makes sense as well. Here are the suppliers across the horizontal axis here and the applications and processes on the vertical. Where you have a process in a refinery, it may be quite different than the process, say, for artificial lift or for fracking, and therefore you're going to find there a unique competitor participating and taking market share in each one of these processes. For intake water, it's pretty much the same whether it's in any different industry. The water is the water that you're extracting from a stream or lake or whatever, and therefore the market shares are going to be more meaningful if they're related to the process rather than to the industry. Steam is another example, as is cooling, where the process is more important actually than the industry itself. In many cases, it's worthwhile looking at market shares for individual companies, in a particular country. Here we have India and companies like NTPC, which is the government utility, and this is a big year in pump purchases for them with 180 million in purchases. So market share analysis for this one company is quite valuable. Pumps World Markets provides forecasts for 15 different industries in 80 countries and sub-regions. There is further segmentation by 4 types of pumps. These forecasts are updated continually during the year. Excel spreadsheets are also provided along with the online displays. Pump purchases for the top 100 customers are included, along with the market shares for the 400 pump companies. And this is the starting point for more specific niches. And here are the main industries covered, so that we are covering, for instance, the food industry as one industry in the report. But then we have potential segmentation into each segment of food. And so you would have breweries versus sugar versus edible oils. But even within edible oils, we have further segmentation. We have production for palm oil, rapeseed oil, sunflower oil, and so forth in each country. And we do the same thing in cane sugar and beet sugar. And it's worthwhile making these segmentations. For instance, cane sugar, they're also generally burning bagasse for power. So you have a whole new process where valves are required. The chemical industry has many different processes and generally can be divided into a couple subsegments and then sub-subsegments of 5 or more each. But there are actually hundreds of niche applications and some within the same plant. So if you're making chlorine like vodka Camille, you may be also using that chlorine in downstream processes. And so there would be a series of different valve applications in that one plant. And they would all use plastic lined pumps of a special design. So there's really only a handful, maybe 10 or 20 suppliers competing for that particular business. And each aspect of the chemical industry has its own unique requirements. The largest use of pumps in the power industry is for coal-fired boilers, followed by gas turbines and nuclear, and then biomass. There's some in geothermal and hydro. The 15 largest power producers by more than 50% of the pumps, there are only 900 power generators with more than 1,000 megawatts of coal-fired power capacity. Of them, Shenhua Guodian has 200,000 megawatts, or nearly 10% of all the world's coal-fired power production. So it's a very concentrated market. The market share hierarchy is unique, but requires knowledge of all the processes and the industries, and therefore is not that easy to come by. But let's take FGD as an example. If you're going to determine the market share for the KSB or Trillium FGD recycle pumps, you really have to start with how much of GDP is going to power. It will be going into power in a particular country. How much of that power will be fossil fired? How much of the fossil fired will be coal? Whether or not SO2 removal will be required. If so, will it be wet or dry? If it's wet, will it be limestone, which uses more pumps than does lime? And even with the absorber type, a spray tower can use twice as much slurry as does a tray tower for the same results. And this then can be extrapolated, as shown here, where you start with the world pump market of 60 billion and work your way down through how much is in power, how much is fossil, how much is coal, how much is going to be in the SO2 portion of coal, how much is going to be in limestone. And presently, there's a much bigger market actually in replace and repair of these big FGD recycle pumps than there is in the new, because it is highly abrasive and corrosive. And there's 2 million megawatts of capacity out there now, and only about 30 or 40,000 of megawatts of new capacity a year. And you can then go through the details of the process itself and what is the absorber recycle pump, and why with a spray tower you're going to have only a few suppliers that can supply those large 50 to 80,000 GPM pumps, but with a tray tower, a large number of pump companies can compete. And then whether you've got ball mills for grinding or dry mills for grinding makes a lot of difference in the pumps for calcium slurry. And then even the oxidation process, if the end product is a soupy natural oxidation, you're going to need reciprocating pumps, whereas if it's forced oxidation and gypsum, you can get by with centrifugal pumps and a much lower investment for the pumps. The metals industry has got a number of different applications. The Pumps World Market provides a listing of all the NICS codes and even names the US and European plants in each of those categories. One of the large applications is cooling, and 83 companies, for instance, make gear pumps, much of it used in this application. And here is an example of the market shares for some of those 83 companies for the external gear pump opportunity. The petrochemical industry is booming now, and a lot of new activity due to hydraulic fracturing and ethane production in the Marcellus region in Pennsylvania, and it's an inexpensive feedstock for ethylene. And another application is the gasification of coal for petrochemicals, which is quite popular in China and is the source of about 25% of the petrochemicals in China. Mining applications include the ore extraction, processing, and ore transport. There's a large market for pipeline transport of ores in a slurry form, primarily using centrifugal pumps. The markets vary considerably depending on the ore in the country. For instance, Chile is a large portion of the world's copper is mined there. And Australia is a large producer of lithium as well as iron ore. The market is concentrated with just 50 companies purchasing the majority of the pumps. Oil and gas is a very big market for pumps, and it warrants segmentation and even sub-segmentation. LNG can be segmented, for instance, into liquefaction, transport aboard ships, and then regasification. Special analyses are available for hydraulic fracturing, which grinds up pumps on a weekly basis and is a huge cost in pump replacement and repairs. Subsea pumps have high pressure and other unique requirements. Coal to chemicals is a growing market in Asia, and direct liquefaction uses large and expensive slurry pumps in the purification of hydrogenated slurry. So there are many, gas to liquids is a big application. And then of course you've got refining, and the even frac sands is a offshoot of the oil and gas industry these days. Pulp and paper involves both the recycled paper, which involves de-inking of processing of scrap paper. But another application is wood chips, and this could be growing because of the potential to plant 1 trillion trees and suck CO2 out of the air. But when those trees die, you have to be able to have a way that CO2 doesn't get back into the atmosphere. and that's with a combustion and sequestration. Black liquor recovery boiler is another challenging pump application. Pharmaceuticals can be split into biopharm and others, and gene therapy is growing at double-digit rates, and there's some unique pump requirements for the closed systems to allow safe transfer from one process to the other. The small cell therapy facilities making very expensive drugs dictate prefabricated facilities, and companies such as Danaher can now supply a plant on a trailer complete with installed pumps and accelerated the time from order to plant operation for a new biopharmaceutical plant. This is critical due to the limited life before patents expire. This approach shifts some of the pump decision-making to the system supplier and away from the operator. Thank you for spending the time to discuss the market share analysis for pumps. This is Bob Mcilvaine, who would be glad to answer any of your questions at 847-226-2391.